You know, Joe Borelli, we're normally talking, you know, politics and everything with him because he's a big figure in the Trump 2020 campaign, New York City council member. But I'm talking to him today as a dad. He's fed up with this. And I believe, Joe, you've pulled your son out of the public school because of all of this. Explain.
Yeah, I mean, as of, 3 days ago, 4 days ago, my son started in the Catholic schools here in New York City. My son does need some services. He needs speech therapy. He needs some OT therapy, and he's doing great. And he did great in pre-K last year. But to have the DOE offer perhaps 1 day of in-person school, which would be occupied totally by his services and not even school, it just was unacceptable. And the other thing that kind of tipped my hand was my wife is a licensed substitute teacher in New York City. She's been a teacher for many years. And we fully expected that her phone would be ringing off the hook leading up to the proposed start of schools because we needed so many teachers. And it just never happened. And unfortunately, we heard, putting my politician hat back on, we had heard from principals and school administrators for months that it's just basic maths. If you take one classroom and split it into essentially 3 cohorts, you would need 3 teachers to actually teach that particular class. And it just seems like there was never any sense of urgency from the mayor or the school chancellor in getting the actual resources, meaning the staffing, that the schools would need. I don't doubt that the schools are sanitized and clean and all of that, but the most basic element, putting a qualified New York City public school teacher in front of a group of young kids, that just seems to have befuddled Mayor de Blasio and Chancellor Carranza.
So what do you do? I mean, this could go on a while. I mean, for you, your son, your family, I mean, you could be in limbo for a good chunk of the school year.
Neil, I was out there at one public school this morning with a bunch of parents with signs and their kids demanding school. We are looking at lawsuits to require school be open. It's unfortunate because, we look around the country and we see every school district is having some hiccups and some problems with their opening plan. And that's okay. And we should be willing to give leeway to administrators who are really trying to pull, all this out of right field, essentially. But when you see New York City just delaying even the start of their plan and unable to even come up with a solid plan. We had parents at the orientation virtually for their kids' schools learning during the orientation while the mayor was on television saying schools won't even be starting. That's how teachers found out. That's how school principals found out as well. I mean, it just really shows incompetence at the highest level. And it's something, we almost treat Mayor de Blasio as a caricature now of incompetence, but you have to reground yourself and realize that the failures of his administration are actually resulting in children missing out on the most fundamental and most critical years of their education. And that's something parents and I and a lot of people just won't stand for anymore.
Well, it says something when newspapers in the New York area, the Daily News, I would think, is a little left-leaning, the New York Post, maybe a little right-leaning, both bashing, stewardship of this and the no communication, because that's what has startled parents like yourself. They just don't know what's going to happen that very day, let alone next week or the week after that. Hope you get through this, Joe. I'm confident you will. Joe Borelli, thank you very, very much. We have reached out to the mayor a number of times. Hope springs eternal that he'll eventually say yes. But again, this is something that's, incited by partisan rage.